Hi, I'm Teena Cahill, and welcome to Wisdom and Beyond. Today we have my friend, Dr. Valerie Brooks-Klein. Valerie's a psychologist in Hamilton, right?
That's right, I'm in Hamilton.
And she's here to talk to us today about the healthy workplace. Valerie, tell me a little bit about this program and who's running it and how you got involved and all this.
Well, I'm in private practice in Hamilton, and I'm a psychologist who sees a wide range of people from very young children to elderly, actually. And
sometimes when I see the elderly, it's actually me. No, go ahead.
No, stop. That's not true.
See, I see the elderly every day.
But I am very much enthralled with the idea of trying to teach people skills to help them avoid a lot of psychological distresses. And I did this years as a psychology teacher, and I've done it for quite a number of years as a community educator through the hospital. And I just volunteered to work on this committee with the New Jersey Psychological Association. And it turned out I ended up being named chair. And so this is my program that I am running throughout the state. And our idea is to try and find companies who have created environments that we consider to be psychologically healthy.
Okay, and we can talk about what that is, just so our audience knows. Everybody knows that I go around the world speaking in companies and speaking about these things. So Valerie was kind enough to ask me to be an advisor to this committee, which is how I found about it. But what I find when I go in and I speak with companies, I don't do what you're doing because I'm not trying to change them. I'm just coming in and giving a talk about happiness and laughter and well-being. But one of the things I've learned in the research of that happiness in the workplace accounts for 10 to 25% of the productivity. It seems to me that's a way to sell this idea that it's not just a bunch of people saying, oh, isn't this nice, but in fact, it increases the productivity for this company, and we live in a capitalistic society. It's always about the bottom line.
Absolutely, that's so true. And they found that when they have a company that tries to institute a healthy workplace, that for every dollar they spend on this healthy workplace, they save $5.93 in healthcare costs.
Through their insurances?
And also through insurances, they have a 20% reduction in health care costs. They have a 30% reduction in workmen's compensation claims. So that they have a much higher level of productivity. If you read in our little, we have a magazine that we highlight our national level award winners who are sponsored by the American Psychological Association. And with Nike Tennessee, they actually increased their productivity by 51%.
I read the stuff that Nike did. They really instituted a lot of things.
That is incredible.
So let's break it down to the basics. So you're in New Jersey.
Yes.
You're the chair of this committee in New Jersey.
Yes.
That's starting with the American Psychological Association, but then sort of handled in New Jersey by the New Jersey Psych Association.
Right, because each state and affiliate and province, because we even have Canadian chapters, we are trying to educate the workplace. We're trying to educate employees so that everybody can understand that we can actually be proactive.
All right, so somebody comes to you and says, okay, so Valerie, I just met this person that runs this business, or I met that person. And let's say I'm one of those people, and you're going to come to me, look, these are tough economic times. I'm kind of scared. You know, consumer spending is way down. Things look a little scary out there. They're making deals when you walk through the department stores. I mean, this has never happened before. I'm really worried about keeping my business going. I don't know if people are going to want my product. I don't know if my product's going to be able to be trucked into me anymore because of the price of gas. It's really scaring out there. And you're going to come and try to, like, convince me to put in another program? Excuse me, girl. What are you going to say to me?
Well, let me ask you, do you want to save money?
Yes.
Do you want to increase your productivity?
Yes.
Would you like to decrease your health insurance costs?
Yes.
Would you like to decrease your turnover rate with employees?
Yes.
Well, then you really need to think about instituting some of these practices so that you can do that.
So then the first thing I'm going to ask you is, how do you know that's going to happen? How do you know all those good things are going to happen?
Because we've been running this program for over 5 years, and we've been keeping these statistics.
Okay.
And it's absolutely phenomenal what happens when you actually take this proactive approach.
So the American Psychological Association has been building a database, and they've looked at when people institute these things, they can actually show there's a cost savings.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I might let you in the door. Okay, now you're in the door. I'm not quite as scared. I don't know if I believe you yet, right?
Okay.
Because I got to like sign those paychecks, or my people don't get paid, right?
Right.
All right. right, so now tell me, what is it you're talking about? How do I make this a healthier workplace? People look pretty okay to me.
Well, there's 5 components that we've identified through research that creates a healthy workplace. But these 5 components are based on effective and open communication. And for many companies, that's quite the challenge.
I mean, I'm actually supposed to speak to the people that work for me?
Not only are you supposed to speak, but you need to check and find out if they heard what you said.
And how about this big thing? How about I actually listen to them?
I love that idea of listening.
Okay.
I love that idea of listening.
So really what you're saying is these 5 principles are based on our relationship.
It is relationship
that we have in the company.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're talking about a bottom-up communication where we're looking at the secretaries and a lot of the staff, and it's going all the way up the hierarchy. And then we're looking at top-down communication where we're trying to understand what kinds of new programs and practices that management is trying to institute. But what companies are so often unaware of is how ineffective their communication is.
Well, and I also say don't forget middle management, because it's where most of us live. All the responsibility, very little of the power, right? So we go, try to manage up, manage down, all those kinds of things. Okay, so I hear that I may have to open my door, okay? I hear that I may actually have to speak to people, may have to hear some things I don't want to hear, but of course that's what great leaders do. We listen to those kinds of things so we can make change. So what are these 5 things that you're talking about? What are these sectors of my company that you're telling me we would need to look at?
Okay, we want employee involvement.
Okay.
And that means, and again, based on this kind of communication, we want employees involved in decision making. We want them to be able to work more independently and maybe having their own task forces. We want them to be able to share in some of these idea-generating practices that we can do with companies.
Many years ago, Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager, and Norman Vincent Peale said, all of us is smarter than any one of us, or something like that. I can't remember the exact quote.
That's so true.
But that's what you're saying.
That's so true. And it reflects a certain type of management style. That would allow for these employees to try and participate.
So what do you do with me if I'm not good at that? So I've always sort of just run this as my benevolent dictatorship. What do you do with me?
Well, Teena, for you that would work. but not everybody, right?
But what do you do with me? How do you? What do you do with me?
Well, and this is why we often will offer training.
Okay,
for
so you offer
people
training.
Who have, sure.
So I would get some management training.
Some relationship skills and learning how to do all of those wonderful things you just mentioned.
Okay.
And the thing is that employees most often will leave a job because of dissatisfaction with their immediate supervisor. And that often does fall on middle management. And from the perspective of middle management, so many of them don't realize that that's part of their job description.
Right.
And this is a part of retraining and getting a whole different kind of thinking for this type of relationship.
Okay, so there's training for me, all right? I'll think about that. No, actually, I think it's a great thing. I can see how people would have some anxiety, so you're going to have to coach people into that a little bit, right?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, and so what's the second thing?
The second thing is employee growth and development. And realize these are not a hierarchical order. These are equally distributed in importance, okay? And what we're talking about is giving employees a chance for growth, to learn more things about their jobs, for tuition reimbursement, being able to do continuing education, just feeling that they are challenged. And that's one of the things that lead to employee satisfaction, is feeling challenged by their job, and also, of course, being appreciated. And that goes to the next
Well, let's
category.
stop with this second one, though, because I'm seeing myself now as the leader of this company, right? And, I speak on leadership all the time. And so one of the things I often say to people is that leadership isn't about me, and it's not about you. It's about listening. It's about observing. It's about developing the potential of the people that work for us.
That's right.
And that's really what you're talking about. My job as a leader is to make transformational change in this company or in my people or in the family. And I think sometimes when we talk about leadership, there's this heroic model of leadership, you know, Franklin Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, but you know, you already saved London. I don't think we're going to do that, you know, right? But it's sort of everyday leadership. Sort of we're creative, we listen, something parents do all the time, something mothers do all the time.
We hope.
You take that skill, into the workplace, and so you would help me as the leader of this company sort of think past myself and set up programs to develop the potential that's in my company that I might not know is there.
Right, and we call that we call that an investment in human capital, to couch it in business terms.
And that would lead, I would think, to some of that increases in productivity, getting people in jobs where they can use their strengths.
Absolutely.
Getting people in jobs where they know what they're supposed to do, or where they like what they're supposed to do.
Right, that role definement is very important.
Okay, I got it. All right, so I open my door, I get past myself a little bit, as George Vaillant would say, okay?
Yes, yeah. And then, you know, we want to be able to recognize employees, and that doesn't just mean, you know, awarding them a gold watch on retirement day. That means fair compensation for the kind of work that they're doing, maybe pay bonuses, and maybe even acknowledgments on your birthday. You know, some kind of method of just recognizing an employee and saying, wow, you're doing a really good job.
I used to teach graduate school. You've taught also, right?
Yes.
And I used to teach learning theory.
Yes.
Do you remember good old learning theory? And what I remember from learning theory is that people get people's behavior sort of get them working at a higher peak performance is if they work on a variable ratio or a variable time schedule. So you're saying embedding these kinds of things in the workplace so that after a certain period of time there may be a reward. After they've done a certain amount of work there may be a reward. Sort of trying to reward people in all areas and making it not so hard to get to that reward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's part of it, but it's also, I think, a relational thing, because I did a workshop yesterday where I had people not only from the upper management who did come later, but I was able to work with the people who are down there in the trenches and offering the services and the support personnel. And one of the things that we were talking about is how frequently people will pay attention to you when you do something wrong, and that the emphasis is always on the negative. And that's when you get people to pay attention to you. Well, one of the things that we tried to work out and we resolved within this workshop is that we were going to resolve to only complain 3 times per day and then to leave it and make sure that you gave, and this goes into, you know, the Gottman research, at least say 5 positive things.
Right. This is why I think that management and leadership are really the same as parenting. We just use different words. I mean, if you want me to tap my knee, every time I tap my knee, maybe you'll throw some M&Ms in my mouth or something. If I like M&Ms, and that'll get me to tap my knee. That's the basic positive reinforcement. So what we want to do with kids is find out what they're doing right and build on that.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what we want to do in the workplace too. See what somebody's doing is right, build on it. Doesn't mean that we don't talk about the critical problems, right? But I always think about the recency and the primacy effect. People are going to remember the first and last thing you say. Tell them something great at the beginning, talk about the challenges in the middle, and tell them how much you appreciate them and something great they do at the end. So that if I'm the boss and I'm coming to talk to these people, they don't think, oh my God, here she comes again, it's all going to be
because
negative.
you've conditioned them for that.
Just like with kids. Right, okay, great. I think that's really important.
So, you know, this gets into the whole idea of behavior management or behavior change. And you're right, we want to change people's behavior, or we want to keep them doing what they are doing well. So that if you punish them, whether it's criticism, you know, whatever other manner that you want to use, it usually doesn't work, and that it creates a very negative work environment.
Absolutely, and also it creates, when we punish people, whether it's social punishment, saying you don't do a good job, or I don't think you're very smart, or whatever those kinds of things are, it creates emotional responses. And what we know is that anxiety, which happens, again, we'll talk about this, I talk about this every show, I think, that in the survival part of our brain, we're conditioned to look at danger, to sense danger, and really anxiety is a survival strategy telling us to be careful.
That's right.
But now we live in this, and then when we have a lot of anxiety, the part where we think sort of slows down a little bit. So we've taken what was made for us to function well out there with the saber-toothed tiger. It was in our best interest. If there was was a lot of anxiety we were feeling because there was a saber-toothed tiger to get out of Dodge, right? But now we've got sort of like social things that go on. It's sort of cultural. So when we say something negative and we use this punishment model, the anxiety level goes up, and we know as teachers, because you and I both have been teachers, that anxiety inhibits learning.
That's right. And it also reduces your ability to be productive on your job.
Exactly.
And then it leads to more stress, and then it leads to a decrease in your immunological function.
Exactly.
And then you miss work because you either take a mental health day or you take off because you're sick.
There you go.
And there's 1 million people who are absent from work each day because of stress.
Absolutely.
1 million.
And what I think has to happen in the workplace, the same as it does in our families or any other part of life, is the only person I can control is me. I have no control over anybody else. So the only person I can change is me. So if I want to change the productivity of my workplace, I have to change myself, and that means I have to change how I relate to people. I have to open my door. I have to learn how to say positive statements. I have to teach people what it is that we need them to do, so that and put them in the settings where they can flourish.
That's correct.
Okay, what else do I need to do as a leader?
And you know, just to emphasize the point that you're making about what happens to people when they are under siege of criticism, often in a workplace, this will happen so many times per day, and if you can't think straight enough to do your job, and this is happening multiple times per day, not only from your boss, but possibly from other coworkers, that means you have a very limited time per day that you may actually be able to focus and do your job.
I agree, and I sometimes wonder, for myself, for anybody, right? You know, what is the amount of time during the day that we actually do productive work? I mean, I think for many of us, there's a lot of productive work, but I think a lot of people have to deal with so many stressors, so many things going on, that it's very hard to do that. And as a boss or a leader, I certainly want the people in my company being able to do that.
That's the whole key. We want to keep all these negative emotions out, because that is the part we can control. And as a cognitive behavioral therapist who's trained with Albert Ellis, my emphasis is on helping people to understand that, you know what, you can control your emotions. And that's a novel concept for many people.
And as a cognitive behavioral therapist, which we both come out of that model, what I like to say to people is our thoughts affect our feelings, and our feelings affect our behaviors.
That's right.
And the difference between the model that you and I come out of and that against what used to be happening in psychology is that people used to think that the emotions drove people, that the emotions drove behavior. But we now know it's the thinking that drives behavior.
Absolutely.
Our thoughts affect our feelings, and if we want to change our feelings, we change what we're thinking.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we need to do.
So if I've been the leader of this company, locked in my office, which probably my company wouldn't be around if I were doing that, any of us, but locked in my office, not showing appreciation, not trying to put people in situations where they can grow, not listening, not attending to these kind of stressors, then I have to change my thinking about what I think a company should look like. That's what you're trying to sell me on, right?
And realize that it's not just the CEO and the president of the company. This can be, you know, through all different levels of departments and units.
But I have to approve it if I'm in charge.
Well, that's true.
I mean, that's what
yes,
I'm
you do have to approve it.
Your job
is
a difficult job, but I love it because your job is to sort of take this area of psychology that we haven't really thought of as being part of the bottom line. It's not what the capitalistic model was built on. It was built on competition. And we're saying competition is all well and good. I'm all for competition in certain settings, but it really also has to be built on cooperation. And when we work together as a healthy unit, sort of, I will say at home sometimes one with the universe, and then Brooks will say, oh my God, she's whacked. But you get what I mean, right? When we all work together, we actually get more of that which we get when we compete.
True. That's so true. And that's been proven in looking at enhanced profits, actually, and productivity.
And there we go to the bottom line. So what else? Tell me another one of these.
Okay, work-life balance. That's another
Which
big
doesn't
one.
exist. I have to tell the people, excuse me one moment. If you're looking for a balance in your life, I would like to tell you that balance is a myth perpetrated on the American worker to make men and women feel guilty about failing at one more thing, when in fact they're succeeding at everything. 70% of the families in the United States are dual income. There is no such thing as balance over time. Balance lasts in the moment. I like to change what I'm thinking, and then I don't have to feel so not successful. Okay, you can
right.
say,
with that
you can
being
use
said,
the term now that we've had my disclaimer.
With that being said, we need companies to understand you do have a life outside of work.
Absolutely.
You do have people you need to take care of, whether it's your elder care, whether it's a family member who's disabled, whether it's children, whether it may even be a hobby you need to cultivate to keep yourself sharp and healthy. But you do have a life outside of work, and what they need to understand is if you have time to be able to do that, and that could be flex time,
right?
That could be telecommuting. Right. That could be, in this one company I was with, they have a 4-day work week schedule now. This could look very different. This could be just giving you an opportunity for family leave and making sure that we're not prohibiting you from possibly furthering up the promotion ladder, because that happens a lot with women who end up being caretakers.
So like it used to be, let's say you're in a big law firm and you decide you're going to work 4 days a week instead of 5. You just went off the partner track.
That's it. You're on the mommy track.
Exactly.
That's it.
Right. And so how is it that, I mean, I think this is a big part of it because, we have all these companies downsizing. We have incredible expectations on the American worker since many companies have gone global. They can't put the resources into into the companies here that they used to, and this is a huge issue. And so you're really talking about, I read an article, I forget the company they were talking about, they talked about they went to a total telecommuting thing with their executives. They said, we don't care where you work or when you work, get your work done. And when they did that, the retention rates went way up and the productivity went through the ceiling.
Yes, and this is up-and-coming developments.
Yes, I think
and
so
you know
too.
Something, since this, if you want to call it a gas crisis or recession, I am hearing of so many more companies who are offering, whether it's the 4-day work week to cut down on gas prices or part-time telecommuting, or even the full-time telecommuting.
And knowing that there's a problem in no matter what we do, one of the things I worry about with that, of course, is that we're social beings, right? We need to connect. And the more time we spend in front of the computer, sometimes the studies are telling us that's not great for us. So we've got to build in ways to have that socialization, take those breaks. But I hear you. So you're talking about you're talking about humanity.
That's true.
In the workplace, humanity.
That's true. And when they understand, again, that it strengthens their bottom line, it begins to make sense.
And knowing, I think, in the workplace, just as we know in life, that real control means you don't have to be in control of everything.
No.
Sort of just allowing people to make some judgments and decisions.
Having that decision making.
I was doing a talk once for a bunch of CEOs, and there was this one great woman, she was CEO of a company, and she had a guy that worked for her who had lost his license years ago. He'd had some kind of drug or alcohol issue. But it was years later, and he was great, but he didn't have a license. And so to celebrate his 10-year history, she gave him the company lawyers, because now he had children and all, to get his license back. Wasn't that a great gift?
That is great.
So she gave him the company lawyers, and then a couple years later he came back in, and she was worried about why he was coming in to talk with her. It was there was an industrial plant, and he came in to tell her that he was leaving, that he was going to another job, because she had created for him opportunity. And now that he had a car, he was able to go out and this great leader that I think had such humanity, instead of saying, how dare you, you owe me, took such a joy in knowing that this guy could go forward with his life in a better way because of what she did. And I think that kind of humanity speaks so well, not only for that person, but it filters down through a company, don't you think?
That's so true. And yesterday when I was at this workshop, one of the activities we did are, what are some of the things that we could change about the company? And very often they brought up that idea of being more empathetic, being more human, being able to connect. And that goes along with what you were just saying.
It goes a long way. Webs of connectedness, kindness. I almost had an argument with a fellow not too long ago. Something happened, and I said, well, I'm a big believer in kindness. And he said, well, I'm a big believer in civility. And then I started to say kindness again. I thought, wait a minute, do I want to have an argument about kindness and civility? So I said, okay. So I went home to see what's the difference between kindness was my language, civility was his language. You know what the definition of civility was?
What is it?
Kindness in small things.
Oh, that's perfect.
But I think that kindness or civility.
Well, and respect.
Right.
Respect and just being able to talk with people as though they are important.
So quickly now, you've come into my company. I agree with you. You see, you're preaching to the choir here. I'm with you.
That's right.
But I'm worried about what's this going to cost me?
Well, it's really not going to cost that much. I mean, if you're, right now we're in a position where we're trying to acknowledge companies where they have taken some significant steps toward this. And in New Jersey, we've already awarded 4 companies. And one of those is a college, Ramapo College. And we have Sobel and Company, who's an accounting firm. And we have Pinnacle. And then we have Broadway House, which is a hospice for AIDS patients. So these companies have some phenomenal things that are already in place because they've already figured this out. Okay. So again, going with this positive idea, let's start rewarding and awarding companies and spreading the word to other companies. Look, they can do this. This is working. And the more exposure they get, the more other companies understand. So this is part of my job, is to market this, get the word out, get the media in on this. And as an association and as part of this program, we go into companies and we talk about this. And I have you know, checklists, and I have things that they can use to kind of evaluate where they are. Again, I offer workshops, and we do workshops with companies. And even the one that I was working with yesterday, it was just one department within a huge organization. I mean, we don't always have the opportunity to reform the entire corporation or the entire organization, or whether it's military. That's also one of our categories. And educational institutions is one of our categories. So we can start small, and we can build up, but you know, we're trying to create this, and we're trying to get more and more companies on board.
Why do you think the American Psychological Association started this program?
Well, I think they started it because they understand that people are becoming more and more stressed, and that it actually costs the United States industry $300 billion a year, whether it's in absenteeism, whether it's in lost productivity, whether it's health insurance claims. It's a huge cost. So instead of waiting until people are having nervous breakdowns, waiting until they're going out on disability, hey, why don't we create a better situation so we can prevent these things from happening?
I think there's another reason they do it too. By the way, I never know what a nervous breakdown is. I never know what that means.
Well, it's a commonly used term.
Everybody's got their own term. Does that mean I had a panic attack, which I
think it's a combination of all of them.
Yeah, right. Well, but I think the other reason that the Psych Association and people like us get involved in these kinds of things now is that we know so much more. Since we've got PET scans, which are MRIs of the brain, we can see the effect of positive emotion on the brain. We can see, we know lots more about the brain. We know, I'm doing this because the left prefrontal cortex is where we have a lot of that positive emotion. And we can look at more negative emotion, which can be over here. And we see all these kinds of things. And so it's not just, again, what we think is going on, but we're able to do research to see the effect of stress on people, where they, and to see the effect of positive emotion on people, where when we laugh, we build killer T cells, you know, when we laugh, we bring, you know, don't stop taking your medicine is what I always say to people, but it's a nice adjunct to everything else, right? So it's not just that all of this is going on, but the great good news in the last few years is we understand more the mechanism of operation of the human body and the mind-body connection, and how it's all one unit, and there are things we can do to enhance our resilience, or there are things we can do that sort of don't enhance our resilience.
That is so true, you know, and as psychologists who are experts in human behavior and who typically lead these types of research projects, we do know. We do know all about these resilience characteristics. We do know what leads to good mental health. So let's get them at that point and try to teach them those skills before they get to the point where they're breaking down.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Valerie Brooks-Klein has been with us today, my dear friend, and thank you so much for being here. She's doing the NJPA Healthy Workplace Program. And if you'd like to get in touch with her, how do they do that?
Well, I have a website at drval.com, or they could also go to the New Jersey Psychological site, which is psychologynj.org. Psychologynj.org. Yes. The Psychologically Health Place Workplace. And you know, psychologists like to build incentives in, so you can get an award. That's right. That's right. Thank you for being with us today on Wisdom and Beyond. Have a great time. Have fun, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Thank you, Valerie. It's great. Thank you. That was terrific. Thanks.